Start right on the West Coast and talk venture capital here and what's going on in the tech world. Kevin Spain is joining us with Emergence Capital. And Kevin, thanks so much for joining us there from San Francisco. Your company has backed some household names in the past, Salesforce.com, SuccessFactors among them. Obviously, the first question out of the gate, the Facebook IPO, it's been a bit of a debacle. Is it causing a chill to run through Silicon Valley right now?
Well, Robert, I don't think it necessarily is. I think, what happens in the public markets always is something that we're thinking about here in Silicon Valley. Anytime we're backing a private company, we're always thinking about how those companies will ultimately be valued if they do eventually go public. I think there's no question that Facebook is a valuable company. Just look at its market cap today. It's still valued at $80 or $90 billion, maybe a little bit less at this point. But it's a very, very valuable asset. I think, clearly it seems that the process around the IPO itself was mishandled. And that's something that we all hope will not happen whenever we take one of our companies public.
Right.
But I wouldn't necessarily read that process as indicating that there's not a lot of value in Facebook or not a lot of value being created out here in the Valley.
Right. Well, is there concern though over exit strategies right now? If you have some late stage companies here that maybe the IPO window is maybe not closed but closing, or there'll be a lot more reticence on Wall Street and among investors to jump into new tech companies when they come to market now.
Well, I think it just depends on the business. I mean, there are a lot of very strong companies still in the IPO pipeline. We've got a number of companies that are contemplating the idea of going public over the course of the next couple of years. These are businesses with very strong fundamentals, with very strong unit economics. Many of them are profitable. These are the kinds of businesses that the public markets like, and I think provided that.
Do you have any on deck?
Not at the moment, but we definitely do believe that the public markets are receptive to technology companies that are fast growing, that are going after big market opportunities, that are doing very innovative things. And what happens with one particular public offering, we don't think necessarily will change public investors' appetite for those kinds of companies.
Do you think it will take as far as the social sphere goes, before we move on, do you think it will take a household name like a Twitter or something to test the waters next, before investors are willing to take a gamble on a smaller company, say a Zynga or a Groupon?
Well, I don't know that that's necessarily the case. I think, there are lots of great companies that, as I mentioned, I think have gone public over the course of the last year that weren't necessarily household names, but have performed incredibly well. I mean, one example that immediately comes to mind is a company called Splunk, right? It's in the B2B space. It's sort of IT infrastructure in the cloud. That's a business that not a lot of public market investors necessarily knew about before the company went out. But if you look at the underlying economics of the business, you look at the growth, you look at the value they're delivering to customers, it's clear that there's a lot of value being created there. So I don't think it's going to take a bellwether name like a Twitter to go public for the environment to pick up. But I do think it's going to take some more strong, interesting, fast-growing technology companies to get out there.
And you're looking more towards the enterprise sector here, and that's more your bailiwick anyway. So let's move on there and talk about the growth you're seeing. And you're seeing it mostly mobile, obviously, with the app space and the cloud. Those are the two hot areas, and that's where you think we'll see the most growth, and that's where the dollars are still flowing into, correct?
Definitely. At Emergence, as you mentioned, Robert, we focus exclusively on B2B, on the enterprise, and this is all we focused on for the last 10 years because
which is business to business for any of our viewers who are not familiar with the term. But go ahead, sorry.
Exactly. So this is an area that year in and year out has produced, I think, a lot of very, very interesting companies. You mentioned two areas that we're spending a lot of time looking at these days. Mobile, clearly, which started as essentially a consumer trend, has now bled over into the enterprise in a very big way. When you think about mobile in our view is essentially a platform shift. We started back in the 60s with mainframes. We moved to client-server technology in the 80s and 90s. We then moved to the web over the course of the last decade. And we now believe that there's a transition that's happening from the web to mobile. You certainly see it in the consumer world. We are starting to see it in a very big way in the enterprise world. And every time there's been a major platform transition like the one we're now experiencing in mobile, there have been some very, very big new players created in the enterprise space.
And so this is where you're seeing mobile and cloud coming together here. And let's talk about a couple of the companies that you like. I believe Doximity was one of them, sort of a LinkedIn for doctors is how some folks have described it.
That's exactly right. So Doximity allows doctors to connect with one another in a very seamless way on their mobile devices. It's all about improving the quality of care by allowing doctors to, in a regulatory compliant way, send messages back and forth to one another or ask others out in the physician community to help with a tough case that they're working on. So seeing a lot of traction, and mobile makes that possible because doctors are always on their feet. So if this were not a mobile-centric offering, it wouldn't work.
So they're providing the software there that keeps that allows this, or they're creating the platform, or merely the software to use someone else's platform, or both?
They're creating the entire platform, the entire network. So as you mentioned, it's sort of like a LinkedIn for doctors, in the same way that that LinkedIn provides the end-to-end platform that allows individuals in the business community to collaborate and communicate. LinkedIn is, or rather, Doximity is doing the same thing, but for physicians.
Now, is this a company you're backing?
It is. We are investors in Doximity, and I'm on the board of the company.
And what sort of stage are they in? Can we look for them coming to public markets anytime soon, or are they still a ways away?
Yeah, they're what I would classify as a growth stage company at this point. At this stage, they've got about 10% of U.S. doctors on their platform, which is pretty incredible when you think about the fact that they just got going a bit over a year ago. So they're scaling very rapidly, but I wouldn't expect them to tap the public markets anytime soon.
Okay, quickly, we've got time to just address another quick company. I know you sent over several companies you were following here. What's the next hottest one you see?
Well, another that I would mention that some of your viewers may be aware of is a company called Yammer. Yammer you can think of as an enterprise social network, so sort of a Facebook, but for inside the corporate firewall. When you want employees to have a platform similar to Facebook where they can communicate in an open way with others inside of the company and improve the way in which they collaborate, improve information flow throughout the organization, Yammer is a platform that lots of organizations, many of the Fortune 500, have adopted for that purpose. So this is a business that actually is led by David Sachs, who was the former chief operating officer at PayPal. So again, an example of something from the consumer world sort of coming into the enterprise world. Company is absolutely on fire, growing by leaps and bounds, also a growth stage company, very excited about the progress they're making.
And another one that you are investing in, or backing?
Absolutely.
Okay.
We are investors in Yammer.
All right, full disclosure there. Well, Kevin Spain, venture capitalist with Emergence Capital, thanks so much for joining us here, and we'll check back in with you for a growth update sometime in the future. There's a quick look at the Emergence website.